This is Ken Crystal, Associate Professor of Law at Widener University School of Law, and welcome to this part 2 of my series of podcasting in law school videos. In part 1 we talked about what podcasting is and why it can be a helpful tool in the law school environment. And hopefully I convinced you enough in part 1 that you want to find out more about how to do it. And that's what part 2 is about. The technology and the strategy for creating podcasts. Let me suggest that podcasting really needs a strategy to be effective, and that the strategy should consist of 4 basic elements. First, you need to find a technology that you can work with in order to create your podcasts. Second, you need to have a plan for the content of the podcasts that you want to create. Third, you need to have a plan for the practicalities, the issues that can arise when you're recording. And fourth, you need to have a plan for distributing your podcasts to your students. Let me talk about each of these 4 elements of podcasting strategy in turn. Technology. As we discussed in part 1, podcasts can be done as audio recordings or as video recordings. And there are many technologies that can allow you to create each kind. Audio technologies, for example, are abundant. The one that I use and the one that I highly recommend is a digital handheld recorder. In a digital handheld recorder, it will record and create a digital file which you can then upload to your computer. The key components or things to think about with a digital handheld recorder is, first, how can I get my files to the computer? And you'll notice in this picture that there actually is a USB connection on the bottom of the recorder that slides out for use in making that connection. Other handheld recorders utilize a cable which plugs into the recorder and then usually has a USB connection that can plug into the computer. But having some way to connect. Second, what kind of file will the digital handheld recorder generate from your recording? Many of the handheld recorders that are now available at places like Staples or Office Depot or online at Amazon, made by Olympus and Sony, are the biggest names, will record directly into an MP3 format file. An MP3 format is the simplest one to use. And so looking for something that can do that is helpful. And the third component that you want to think about is that your recorder has a pause button, the ability to pause in the middle. On this digital handheld recorder, I press the record button to start recording and then press the record button again to create a pause. And when I am done, I press the stop button and that generates the file for me to use. So digital handheld recorders, a very good way of making audio podcasts. But it is by no means the only way. Windows 7 has built into it an audio recorder that you can utilize. It will record in what is known as a WMA file format, which works great in Windows but not so good on Apple. And so you might have to convert those into MP3. But a computer with a microphone might work. Smartphones, both in the Android and in the Apple markets, have apps that can serve and create a recorder on your smartphone. Here on my smartphone I have the HiQ MP3 recorder shown, but there are many kinds that are available, and again in both markets. And at least in the Android market, there's even one recorder called the Virtual Recorder, which can be used on your tablet and actually has as a backdrop a picture of an old cassette to make it look like you're recording on tapes. When it comes to video technologies, there are, of course, many different available. Obviously, the most common would be to use some kind of a camera. It can be a camcorder camera. Many digital point-and-shoot type cameras now include video capabilities. And even smartphones can generate video files. So a camera that can record visuals, if you want to create a video podcast, you have to have that technology. But it's not just cameras that can create videos. PowerPoint can also create videos. As a matter of fact, this podcast that you are watching right now was created in PowerPoint. Basically, by having a slideshow and then utilizing the program to add narrations with each of the slides. And then PowerPoint 2010 will take that file, convert it into a video file, which can then be uploaded to YouTube, which is exactly what I've done with this particular presentation. So that's another way to create a video, although it tends to be sort of a slideshow video as opposed to actual images. But whether you're going to create audio or video, you need to think about the key issues for technology. And the first and most important is that you have a familiarity with the technology that you're going to use, that you are comfortable with it, so that it's easy for you to use. It can be extremely frustrating in trying to create podcasts if you're also struggling with the technology itself. That's why I personally recommend the digital handheld recorders. But whatever it is you choose, just make sure that you have some comfort with using it and know how it works, how to pause it, how to stop it, those kinds of things, because it will make it easier for you to use. And the second thing is to think about the file type that your technology is going to generate. As I indicated before, I record to MP3 files because I have found that recording to other technologies tends to make them be less user-friendly for my students. I had one handheld recorder that recorded directly into the WMA format. Works great in the Windows Media Player, but my students with Apple computers had a devil of a time trying to use it. And so MP3s work in all the different kinds of computers and technologies that your students would be listening to the podcasts on. And so that's why I would recommend thinking about MP3s. Now when it comes to video, that may be a function of where you're going to post it. Because, for example, if you're going to post on YouTube, as I have with my videos, generally YouTube, in uploading it, tends to make it into a universal format that anybody can watch. And so that's a little bit less of an issue. But if you're going to post it in some other way, you have to think about, are you utilizing a file type that many different types of computers can watch? Alright, so that's technology. How about the content? You need to have a plan for what the content of your podcasts are going to be. Think it through ahead of time to organize your content so that you know what you want to say. And obviously, there are different ways you can do it. You can simply wing it and extemporize. You can utilize your notes. You can create an outline, or you could even create a script. I tried that once. I had my first set of podcasts typed up by my ever-patient faculty secretary, and then I tried to read the scripts to create a new set of podcasts. And what inevitably happened to me was that somewhere in the middle of reading that text, I would skip a line, miss some words, and end up uttering a cuss word that I would then have to re-record the podcast. So, beware that scripts can do that. But if you're comfortable with that and are more comfortable with the script than using an outline or extemporizing, do what works best for you. But have a plan and organize the content ahead of time. Also, you want to think about the practicalities, the issues that can arise during your podcast recording. And there can be many practical considerations. One thing to think about is minimizing distractions. When I was first recording my podcast, I used to do them in my faculty office. And inevitably, the phone would ring, so there'd be the sound of a ringing phone on the podcast. I would pause, answer the phone call, and then come back to the podcast not remembering where it was I was talking. Minimize distractions. Unplug the phone. Close the office door. Try to focus just on doing this one at a time. And distractions can also include the kinds of things that you might not immediately think about, like echoes in your office or in the room you're recording, or bad lighting that might adversely impact a video. Thinking about those things ahead of time and minimizing them can help you to produce a better podcast. Also, you need to have a plan for when you make mistakes, when you stumble over a word. Cursing in the middle of your podcast is not a recommended strategy, but you might just go with the flow, correct yourself and go on. It doesn't have to be perfect, and students may even appreciate the fact that occasionally you stumble over a word. You have to have a plan as to how you're going to deal with that. And if you don't want to have those stumbles in there and you're going to re-record, that's fine. But just think that it might happen, and what are you going to do if it does? Finally, you want to think about how you're going to distribute your podcasts. You can distribute them on physical media. Burn them onto a CD and make that available in the library. Put it on thumb drives that you pass out in class. I've done both of those things. And that's certainly one way for students to get files. But it's limited in terms of the student's ability to access it, at least initially. They have to go to the library, get the CD, download the podcasts, before they can then listen to them whenever they want to. A better place is to post them on the web, so that they're available whenever the students can get to the web. I've chosen to post mine on my Twen site for the class. I just simply have a separate folder called Podcasts and simply place them on that page, and students can get them whenever they want to. But it doesn't have to be Twen. If you have some other kind of website or web feature that you're using, you can put them there. It is possible to post them on iTunes. I've never done it. I don't know how hard it is, but it is possible to get them there if you really want to compete with Lady Gaga. But another way to get podcasts available is through Kali's Classcaster site. Kali has created what they call Classcaster, and it is a podcasting service available to law faculty. You set up your own location on the Classcaster site, and then you can upload files that you may have recorded on your digital hand recorder, or you can even make a recording on the telephone that then is on the Kali site. They have an MP3 player there so that students can go to the site and select and listen to your podcast on the Kali site itself. Kali is familiar to students as well as faculty, so that familiarity may make it easier to do. Whatever way you want to do it, you want to make sure that you make these available to your students so that they can use them and maximize the benefits available. All right, well, I hope that this has now convinced you that you really want to try this. And in part 3 of this series, we're going to actually create a podcast so you can see how easy it is to do. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thanks.